Welcome, everyone, to another edition of the Housing for All webinar series produced by the Dallas Housing Coalition. My name is Andrea Gillespie, and I serve as your host of this series. I'm also Senior Manager of Community Development at Charles Schwab Bank and a board member of the Dallas Housing Coalition. Thank you for joining us this morning. On each episode of Housing for All, we discuss whether Dallas is big and if it is truly big enough for everyone by having impactful conversations with members of the Dallas Housing Coalition and other community leaders who are the city's strongest advocates for keeping the city affordable. Joining us this morning is Rabbi Nancy Kasten, Chief Relationship Officer of Faith Commons. Nancy is a Reform rabbi, community educator, volunteer, and advocate. Nancy is also certified in Jewish mindfulness meditation and thrives on making meaningful connections across Jewish, interfaith, and secular communities. Her leadership roles extend to the boards of Texas Impact, a statewide interfaith organization, Trua, and Polyphony, which promotes unity among Arab and Jewish youth through music. She holds active roles with Reform Judaism's national and state-based initiatives and participated in the 2020 Op-Ed Project Public Voices Fellowship. Thank you so much for joining us, Nancy.
Thank you for having me.
Well, great. I'm so excited to talk with you this morning, and I just want to jump right in. And first, I'd love to hear more about your organization, Faith Commons, including the history of the organization, its mission, and some of its recent efforts or success stories.
Of course. Thank you for asking. Well, it's nothing new to say today in today's political and cultural environment that people are using their faith values to support their particular political positions and policy positions. And, you know, this was part of the reason, a big part of the reason why in 2018, my partner, the Reverend Dr. George Mason, decided to start Faith Commons, which is an interfaith organization intended to lift up faith voices in the public square for the common good. You know, a lot of the voices that are heard today, the loudest voices and the voices that get a lot of airplay, are very conservative Christian voices and Christian nationalist voices. And we know that we need other options for people to voice their faith values when it comes to their engagement in their communities. So we try to offer language and bring people together to talk about how our faith can bring people together rather than to divide us, how we can strengthen our democracy rather than to weaken us. And we do that in a variety of ways. We have a website that outlines everything that we do, www.faithcommons.org. Currently, we are convening or co-convening two different collaborative efforts in the city of Dallas. One is intended to help to conduct a safe, secure, efficient, and effective election in November. So we're co-convening that with the United Way of Metropolitan Dallas. And we've also been engaged for the past several years in a project to address food insecurity in South Dallas. And that's, I think, where a lot of our conversation may touch on issues of affordable housing. We're also currently offering a very short 10-minute discussion each week. We are calling it 10 for 10, Voting Vision, Not Division. And that's available on our social media and Facebook page and other social networks, as well as our website. And we're addressing issues like labor, education, healthcare, family, how our faith values might inform our decisions in November.
Great, great. And with all the issues that you just talked about in terms of the overall efforts of the organization, how does housing affordability fit within your work? Is it something that Faith Commons addresses, or if not, would like to address?
You know, housing affordability is part of a network of um, human rights, of human needs that people are entitled to and that our society is called to provide so that everyone can thrive. We know that different people play different parts in a well-functioning society. And in order for our society to function well, we have to make sure that people in every level, in every sector of our society can thrive. And so that means we have to provide them with the ability to house themselves, feed themselves, get the health care they need, the education they need, to live in places that are not being damaged by the environment, to be able to breathe clean air, drink clean water, all of those things. So, Faith Commons decided several years ago to focus on the question of uh, food insecurity in South Dallas because we saw that even with all of the increased attention to food insecurity, people, worrying that we have food deserts and the number of people being fed by the food bank is increasing all the time, we're still seeing increasing levels of food insecurity. So we went to find out why that is, and we started meeting with people who are providing food within their own neighborhoods, finding sustainable ways to do that that don't rely on supply chains that can shut down at any moment, that don't automatically depend on a higher corporate entity benefiting financially from whatever they decide to offer to these communities. And I think that definitely apply. I mean, we can't separate housing from that. If people are paying too much for their housing, they're not going to be able to feed their families. If people are living in substandard conditions, then they're not going to be able to access the food that they need and keep it in the way that needs to be kept so that they can, again, be healthy and nutritionally sustained. So we see, we're more, and of course, also our work in preserving democracy and helping people have a voice so that they can stand up for their own communities, say what they want in their communities, not just in terms of jobs and education and healthcare, but also, of course, in terms of housing.
Thank you. And I can't underscore the point that you raised that housing affordability and how much someone's income goes towards housing impacts so many other parts of their budget, like what they can buy at the grocery store and things of that nature. So thank you for raising that point. And it definitely leads into my next question, given how important ensuring housing fits all budgets. What role do you see houses of worship or the faith community playing in developing housing solutions for all incomes? And are there any promising models that you've seen either here in Dallas or other parts of the country?
Well, my belief is that we need to organize people of faith, not necessarily faith communities, because I think that these issues have unfortunately been politicized, and even though they should not be partisan issues, because quality housing is important for every sector. It doesn't matter if you're a business person in corporate America, if you're a libertarian who wants to be able to do whatever they want to do with their own land, or someone who thinks that, it's important to provide housing for people so that they can maximize their potential as God's creatures on earth, right? I mean, there are a lot of different reasons that should be cut across partisan lines, but unfortunately, it has become politicized. And so places of worship organizations are less um, able, honestly, to take positions and still create the sense of inclusivity and love within their congregations that they want to maintain. So I think it becomes up to individuals to organize together through their faith values, sometimes with others from their own faith communities, sometimes not. and to advocate for different land use options, to advocate, as Dallas Area Interfaith does, for, and they do it through a congregational model, for the city to enforce their codes when it, to help the city enforce codes with developers and rental owners of apartment complexes and things like that. There's organizing that can be done also in terms of, the plan that our city of Dallas actually passed in terms of creating more affordable housing. And we need to be organizing together to develop an appetite and political power behind the ideas of more dense housing, more mixed income housing, more ways that we can house people that will both benefit our long-term sustainability in terms of an environment, just from an environment perspective, as well as our long-term sustainability as a cohesive Dallas that can function with every sector thriving.
I love that. I loved how you really brought some of the very salient issues of housing in focus in terms of creating mixed income developments, experimenting with density, policies of that nature that we know can help ensure that housing is available for all. And I'm wondering if you could drill down to us for a second and share just, as an advocate, what are some practical things that faith leaders or people of faith can do? If they care about housing for all solutions, what are some just practical or little things they can do to support housing for all solutions?
Well, I mean, first of all, we can be better informed. I mean, I have to admit, even I'm interested, but there are so many other things that I'm trying to keep up with that it was only because I got an invitation to be on this webinar that I went and did my own research into this area specifically, and realized that I could be getting a lot more involved in some of this. So, for example, I mean, I don't know if it would have made any difference at all, but I know that in District 11, there was a plan that City Councilwoman Janie Schultz had with others to develop a mixed income and multi-sector living environment and community that had all the kinds of services that we need in terms of transportation, school, retail, all of those things were right there, and it would have been an ideal place in a what do we call those? High impact zones or
Oh, yeah, high opportunity. Yeah.
opportunity zone.
Mhm.
And we also had that area at 75 and Central. Like, those are places that we as faith leaders need to be saying to our other people of faith, look, we need this. We can't keep protecting our own self-interest because turns out not to be our self-interest. If we don't develop different models of living together, we are going to become more divided, and we are going to become weaker because we won't be able to protect ourselves ultimately. So I think we need to get more informed. I think we have to get more engaged. I think we have to be more willing to talk to people that we haven't talked to before. And we have to be able to think creatively, not to be limited to, what we've become used to in the last, 50 years of opportunity and economic growth, but what we're looking to in the future and how we can best prepare for that. And that is a faith obligation, not to think just about what we want from the past or the models we've seen from the past, but to take those values and apply them to how we're going to realize God's beloved community in the future.
Thank you. And going back to a point you raised, which I just wanted to underscore, is just the practical ways that we can talk to one another about these issues. And and yeah, I think in personal conversations, a lot of ground can be covered, especially, when the relationship and trust has always already been there for between whoever it is that one is talking to and connecting with about these issues. If the trust and relationship building is already there, it sounds like it's a good environment for having additional conversations about housing and what housing for all really means and what it could do for our community in a positive way. It sounds like that's really what you're honing in on as far as practical things
And
that
I
people can
think
do.
that Dallas is part of our problem in Dallas is we separate the conversations where we get to know people who are different from us, right? Like the United to Learn and United We Dine and all those things are great things, but we don't attach them to the practical and the, infrastructure of our city. So we end up having conversations with whoever shows up at the table. But what Faith Commons has tried to do is bring in people who are actually working on these issues from different sectors to be able to address, um, to really make an impact on the upstream policies that are affecting our lives downstream.
Yes, I love that. And wanting to go a little bit further in this advocacy conversation, and with you being a member of Dallas Housing Coalition, and the coalition is very fortunate to have over 100 organizations and supporters of its efforts. Um, I'm wondering, how would you like to see Faith Commons kind of going forward collaborate with the Dallas Housing Coalition, as well as other interfaith organizations that in Dallas?
I mean, I think there would be some value in bringing together the partners and individuals who are involved in the coalition who are clergy or faith leaders of different kinds and having us, think about messaging that is particular to, a faith perspective on this, why we do this as people of faith, why we think why we need to promote the policies of the Dallas Housing Coalition, why we need to make our voices heard. And by the way, I mean, another problem, of course, is that this, not just our city, our state, it's very hard to exercise our voices in the halls of government where the policies and decisions are being made. It takes a lot of time and people are working and they have a lot on their agendas. And not everybody can take an entire day to go down to City Hall on a Wednesday and wait until their time is called, even though they might be interested and want very much to have a policy supported. So I think we can also think about ways that we can make our voices heard that don't depend on physically showing up in those settings because it's daunting and impossible for a lot of people.
Yeah, I think that raises a great point in that most people's lives are so busy with work, family, all other types of responsibilities, and it sounds like the challenge and the opportunity is creating ways where people can stay informed and contribute that doesn't require a lot of rearranging their schedules or spending time traveling and sitting in one place for hours on end.
Yeah.
Great. Are there any, I'm just curious, are there any things that you've seen successful that have allowed people to stay informed and get involved without having to always show up for a 3-hour meeting or event?
A few years ago, there was a group that got together and really honed in on the city budget and then created learning sessions for people to become really informed about the budget before it went to a vote. And, you know, efforts like those are really, really time consuming, but also really important. We've just had town hall meetings for our current, for the budget that has been proposed. I went to my council district's meeting. There were far more city employees at the meeting than residents of my district. People were there for their special interest, which isn't a bad thing. I mean, I think that we do live in a city that's connected. So what does affect one city council district affects another. So I'm not objecting to that, but I think that we need to help people understand how important the budget is, that the budget is a moral document and reflects our values. And, things like taxes, if we start thinking about, for example, um, we're all supposed to be thrilled that we have a property tax decrease. But that property tax decrease only really benefits people who already are in high income areas with high property values. And to think about what we might be able to do if we gave tax benefits to people who are renters, if we gave tax benefits to apartment complex owners who actually meet code and provide some kind of rental assistance so that people who are renting can have the long-term investment in their community because they know they can depend on how much they're going to have to pay, and they don't have to worry that their rent is going to get raised every 6 months or every year. I mean, we really need to look at our budget, to look at who benefits from the budget that is passed, and then start organizing ourselves for a different vision of Dallas. There are going to be these city charter amendments that are coming up in November. We need to know what those are. Some of them are really good, like moving our municipal elections to November instead of having them in May so that we can get more voter turnout. But some of them are amendments that are coming from outside of Dallas. Some of them are amendments that wouldn't help affordable housing at all and might hurt them. We need to know what they are. And then we have to start writing our own amendments so that we can have a city charter that reflects what we want to see here in our vision of Dallas.
Great, thank you. And just as we round out this conversation, I'm wondering, Nancy, if there are any last thoughts that you'd like to share with our audience today about the role that people of faith and faith communities and leaders can play in promoting housing affordability. You shared a lot, but any last comments or reflections on that?
I would just encourage people to really do research from and look at information from credible sources, not rely on media or memes or other people's interpretations of policies and things like that. I know it's a lot of work, but if we want to make responsible decisions, there are a lot of people who have vested interests in creating false impressions about some of the proposals in housing and other, other aspects of society that we depend on, again, for safe, healthy living. So I think we have to get smarter. We have to do more research. We have to read more credible sources. I think podcasts are great because often you get more than one perspective. So that's my advice.
Great, great. Well, thank you, Nancy, so much for joining us this morning and sharing your unique your unique perspectives with us on housing affordability and the role people of faith and faith communities can play in supporting that. Before we sign off today, I want to encourage all of our viewers to follow the Dallas Housing Coalition on all of its socials for updates on how to get involved in the work of the coalition and stay connected with its Housing for All webinar series. While you're at it, please visit the Dallas Housing Coalition website to learn more information about our member organizations like Faith Commons. While you're there, it's a great way to make sure that you are a member, and if not, sign up to be part of the coalition. Also, we have two events coming up that the Dallas Housing Coalition is sponsoring and convening. One of which is a presentation by Strong Towns founder Charles Marin on October 2nd. And then also the coalition is having its inaugural housing summit on November 21st. So be sure to stay in contact of event logistics, locations, and all of that good stuff by checking out the coalition's webpage and making sure you're following its socials. Thank you, everyone, for joining us for another installment of Housing for All, where we discuss whether Dallas is big and if it is truly big enough for everyone. Have a wonderful weekend. We'll see you soon.